welcome to the Beauty and the Brand podcast. So excited to have Rachel Roberts Mattox here. She's a brand strategist and former agency founder who helps beauty and wellness brands develop standout positioning, refresh their identity, and go to market with clarity. And as the former CEO of creative agency Oil and Water, and now a consultant with some of our favorite brands, she has led rebrands for cult status favorites like Beauty Heroes, Inner Essence, Captain Blankenship, a founding member of the board and a graduate of Columbia Business School's CMO program. Rachel now brings her strategic process to brands ready to break through. So welcome, Rachel. So excited to have you on here.
It's such an honor. Thank you, Aggie. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. And just a little background information for everybody. Rachel actually did this amazing masterclass inside C2C, our accelerator, on go-to-market strategy, and our founders absolutely loved it. And it's so great to be able to dive deeper today with you on this.
Amazing. So glad to hear that too. It was so fun to take your founders through this process that I've been working on for almost a year. And so it was like a kind of a big reveal moment. And it was amazing to get that feedback from your founders.
Yes. And I definitely took notes myself too. There's certain things that stood out. We're going to talk about it today. So you've helped some of the most beloved beauty brands completely reimagine their identity. How do you know when a brand is due for a rebrand?
Yeah, great question. And there's not one answer to that. I mean, I think there are a number of reasons why a brand would choose to kind of embark on the rebrand process. Usually it's several years, maybe even a decade or so into the life of the brand in the market. The most common things I see is when a brand understands that their target consumer, the one that's been loyal to them, that's been sort of a repeat customer for a long time, they're evolving. And they realize that their tastes, the way they're sort of speaking and engaging with culture, the things that they're sort of responding to, that's evolving because we're always evolving and we're always growing and we're always being shaped by culture. So when a brand is really connected to their customer and they realize that their customers' tastes and preferences are evolving, they might feel like they're kind of outdated and they need to sort of refresh themselves to stay current with their customer. And then a dotted line to that is when a longer term brand, more like a legacy brand, realizes that, yes, they have their core customer and they've stayed loyal, but now there's a new generation coming up behind them. Maybe it's their daughters or their kids or whatever. And they go, wow, okay, we've captured mom. Now we need to capture daughter. And we've seen this with big time with brands like Clinique, and Coach is a great example of having gone through a real like generational inspired rebrand. So those are two kind of big ones. I think the risk, and there's a lot of risk involved in a rebrand, especially for indie brands that have been in the market for like, say, under 10 years. You really want to be careful as a brand founder not to rebrand based on a reaction to micro trends that are happening in culture, or just a reaction to what other brands in the space are doing who are your competitors. It's very easy to look at them and say, well, I feel like I'm not as cool. And there are other ways to jump into the cultural narrative without doing a full rebrand. That is something, and we could talk all day long about that. I have examples of brands that have done that. And I think that's my sort of cautionary tale about rebrands. It really needs to be internally motivated by your business and not externally motivated by what we're seeing other competitors do.
And one thing too, I'll note on that is like sometimes I'll see founders want to do a rebrand because a few customers said X, right? And it's like, but is that enough? Number one, that sample size is too small to make a decision, a completely like a multi-thousand investment decision to rebrand by feedback from a few customers. And are they even the target customer to begin with, right? So that I see too is like X, Y, and Z said I need to launch this product, or X, Y, and Z said like the packaging should look like this. I know I've been there personally as a founder where I was like, ooh, like this person that matters in the industry said I should change the packaging. And I felt like at the time I did have to do that, not realizing like maybe that wasn't the case, right?
It gets really tricky too when it's retailers who are giving you that feedback. And it's well known that certain retailers, especially the Sephoras and the Ultas of the world, want to be in the kitchen with the brand. They really want to help shape every piece about the brand because they know what works for their consumer. And I think that there's a real argument to be made with like the collaboration with your key retailers. No question there. I think that the brand has to walk a really fine line and make sure that they're staying true to their essence, that they're not abandoning their core why, their reason for being, in an effort to satisfy retailer demand. So it's tricky, and it's definitely a process that requires deep thought and an expert team to help execute.
Absolutely. And then, so tell me a little bit more about, there's brands that have beautiful packaging, and I've seen some incredibly beautiful packaging, but then don't necessarily win in the marketplace. What does it need to actually be positioned to win, or not even to win, but to stand out, that goes beyond packaging?
Yeah, such a great question. The short answer is a brand needs layers of meaning. So it really begins at the brand strategy phase, which is why I'm so passionate about always starting with brand strategy, which is really the process of defining who you're for, who your competition is, but how are you differentiated from them, not just in terms of functional benefit, but in terms of, the emotional benefit that you're offering. Perhaps you're offering something, a common function like skincare in a new and fresh and innovative way. And I even begin my brand DNA work begins with the brand attributes, which are these ownable sort of elements to your brand that really are the foundation of a brand that nobody else can really claim. So from the very beginning in brand strategy and brand DNA, we are looking for and defining those pieces of your brand story that really only you can own. And then we build up from there, the emotional benefit, the personality and the voice and the tone that really communicate this difference. And then we get to the brand essence. And the brand essence becomes the sort of a very succinct statement of purpose and of your why. Like, why are you here? And it becomes this internal North Star that hopefully your customer really feels. So the packaging from my process is always sort of step 3. We do brand strategy, brand DNA, brand identity, and the brand identity sort of is expressed through packaging. That really is informed by brand strategy and brand DNA. And when people come to me with a beautiful packaging and logo and artwork, and they have no foundation, no core foundational elements to their brand, I always get nervous because I think like, this is so pretty, but what does it mean? And what, if you start to peel back the layers of your brand, if there's no there, your customer is going to feel that. And there are a million other options on the market that they can go to with pretty packaging and functional product. You've got to have the rich story and the layers of meaning that point to the deeper why of your brand.
I love what you said about like layers of meaning. I like that. I'm like writing that one down. Layers of meaning. And I do want to challenge you there for a moment. So one thing that sometimes I see is there is that deeper layer of meaning, right? There is that like, maybe one of the meanings is like the story is about someone who maybe was in a situation where they lost their confidence, and beauty kind of brought that confidence back. And so much of that deeper meaning and that impact and that purpose is to help someone by using their products really find their inner confidence. But I find that while that's beautiful and it doesn't actually move the needle when it's communicated outwardly to the customer. Yes, like everyone wants that. Like people want more confidence when they use a product, right? That's typically where we're going when we use a new product. But how do you take that and make it truly different or unique and really impactful on the external messaging to the customer?
So you're spot on. And the initial question was around how do you position it to win? And positioning is everything. So from my definition of positioning is, who are you for? What are you offering them? What are you offering them that's different and better than what the competitors are offering? And where are you showing up to win? And so you're 100% right that the why that drives any creative and visual decisions, right? Of who are you and why are you here? Ultimately, that journey of brand strategy does have to take you to deeply understanding your customer and the positioning and the messaging, other than the brand story and other than the founder story that might sort of sit on the website. All of it has to be transformed into a customer facing, customer focused, customer obsessed brand message and brand narrative. It's not really ultimately about the founder. Yes, it started there. And yes, the founder is going to have this North Star that's driving their decisions. And because they know so well that their why is connected to their customers' why, right? Usually the first customers in the door are the ones that go, oh my gosh, that's me. I really resonate with that, right? Obviously, over time, the customer base gets bigger and bigger. Some customers may not even know the founder story, but what they feel is that the founder has taken their personal experience, their passion, and they've turned that mirror around and they've said, I'm going to make this all about the customer. They're going to feel so seen and so heard and so loved by my brand that the customer is going to go, why would I go anywhere else? This is a brand that totally gets me, my reality, how I shop, the fact that I'm doom scrolling at 2 a.m. in the morning and I'm looking for something to scratch some itch. They understand that I'm going to spend $7 on a matcha latte at Starbucks every morning because you have to become so obsessed with your customer. But it does begin with that founder deeply understanding who they are, why they're doing it, who they're for. And then it goes outward. So the positioning is ultimately a customer facing sort of exercise. When you land on a really strong positioning, it really should point to, we're solving a problem for someone. And we know who this person is and we know what problem we're solving and we're doing it better than anybody else can do it. And then that becomes the sort of outward facing, customer facing mantra to the world.
Love that. Inner and outer coming together with strong positioning. So tell me, okay, moving forward to brands that you've worked with who have done this so well, that is one brand that comes to mind, especially because I get Michelle's emails and I love how you can tell just through the story she tells. She has these letters from the founder where she tells gives a lot of behind the scenes of where she came from and her passion and her purpose. And that so beautifully translates to the external, which is very royal heritage cultural brand. So what was your experience, or what hand did you play in the branding process with Runabout, and what was the brand trying to solve when they came to you?
Yeah. So Michelle came to me, this was 7 or 8 years ago now, so a while ago. And if we could rewind the clock, you can appreciate, she was really indie. She obviously wasn't in Sephora yet. She was really just starting out. And in full disclosure, she had a very strong brand platform already. She knew exactly who she was. She really understood the Ayurvedic foundation to her brand, and she was super unapologetic about leaning into that. Even as an indie brand that Ayurveda, of course, it was known and it's been around for a while, but it's not a sure win to launch an Ayurvedic brand as an indie founder.
I know, because I've worked with many Ayurvedic brands, and
yeah. And so she was bullish on really bringing this to people in a fresh and modern way. And I deeply respect her for that. She also had a really beautiful brand identity already established. We didn't touch that. That was not the work that we did for them. And I really love the design team she worked with. So she came with clarity, which is a gift for any agency. And she came to my agency at the time because the brief was clear. We were building a brand ambassador program for her. Now, if we, all as founders and entrepreneurs, we can rewind the clock. ambassador affiliate programs were not necessarily in their infancy, but they're nothing like what they are today, where like PR is doing affiliate, and it wasn't as robust. So we were really sort of approaching ambassadorship through the lens of finding aligned influencers who would be coming onto the affiliate platform and really being sort of a vocal advocate for the brand, promoting it to their audiences, obviously getting an affiliate commission, but starting this sort of this inner circle, right? And this was really the beginning of what we see today is their loyalty program, their Royal Rewards. I had to actually kind of brush up because it'd been such a long time since I have worked with Ronavant, but I went back to the work that we did and the language that we were really trying to sort of build upon. And it was all around like building this royal family. And to your point, Michelle was really, and still is, so passionate about this personal thread of her journey as an Indian American woman and her hair and her skin and pulling her heritage through and being really proud of her heritage. I think that the headline at the time was Claim Your Crown. And that was all about owning your unique story, your beauty story.
That's said so
you
beautifully, like claim your crown, like so uniquely. It's not just like, oh, empower yourself or we empower you or like, the word empower.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's everywhere. To your point about the previous question with the personal story and about people not necessarily like aligning with the founder's journey and it kind of like falls flat. Well, I think what Michelle did so well is you can see how she pulled her story of the Indian woman and really rooted in Ayurveda all the way through to this customer facing experience of claim your crown. So again, she's turning that mirror around and she's saying, it's your turn. And you can use my beauty brand as this mirror and a platform and a place of inspiration for you to own the unique beauty that is your own and write your own story. And so I think I would say that's why it was successful. And fast forward now almost a decade, really, she's in Sephora and she's got a very, I'm sure, healthy rewards program with multiple tiers. And she's got influencers working for her brand. But it's so fun to look at the origin point of where it started. And I do think Michelle started with the right frame of mind, using her personal story to inspire others to feel, as you said, confident. But we used a different language. We used very branded language of claiming your crown and building a royal family for the brand. So you see how it's like the structure is there, but it all ties together in a really beautiful branded way.
And what would you say would be like the biggest result of the work you did together? What was the result of that? And what would be the takeaway that you'd want the audience to hear of how they could apply it to their brand?
I mean, as an agency, and we were a creative agency and a strategy agency more than a sort of an execution agency. We hired developers and she had her own in-house team to kind of drive the program. And so I'm not as familiar with the metrics of how did that influencer program succeed, et cetera. But what I can look to in the brand and see is that there are just marketing best practices as you're building your brand to scale, particularly D2C. So this was all a D2C program, driving online sales through affiliates, through influencers. And that framework is alive and well today. It's even more robust. We did actually we rolled up our sleeves and we did help build the program on the back end. And we were involved in sort of the execution and the rollout and the launch of it. And we ran some social ads to promote it. I think looking at where the brand is today, why that was successful is that it was rooted in an authentic story. It was something that she could point back to and say, all of this ladders up to my essence, my why I'm here, why I started this in the first place. And there's no disconnect. Like, even though this is obviously conversion driven, transaction driven, revenue driven, I'm sure on the back end, she's like, okay, we need to inspire these ambassadors to drive a higher basket. And if they hit a certain tier per month, they're going to get rewards. Obviously, it's all conversion driven, but the customer is just in the brand world. They're just in the brand universe with them, and they don't feel they're being sold to. They feel like they're being invited into. And I think that's what she did so well.
I love that. Okay. So tell me, are you willing to share maybe a more recent example of a brand that maybe have not had that same clarity and came to you with a lack of clarity that ultimately led to whether it be a really successful launch after that work together or a successful rebrand or sort of getting out of the plateau?
I mean, there are definitely examples of brands that have not yet gone to market where they're really struggling with the clarity of who they are and what they're offering. But if we want to look at example, and I mean, obviously that's what I spend most of my day doing, is helping them get really clear before launch. But if we want to look at a brand that was a great brand, but just needed just some deep revitalization, and the rebrand really kind of kicked them into high gear, I think like Captain Blankenship would be a really good example. I love Captain Blankenship. I always did before I worked with them. I found them to be such a sort of a fresh breath of air in the space. They were clean. When clean was a sort of novel, and they were sort of one of the OG brands in that space, but they always sort of had their own point of view, and they were kind of always a little bit quirky. And I think that the essence of Captain Blankenship is really connected. The brand is really in so many ways sort of a reflection of the founder, Jana or Yana.
Love the brand, by the way. I use their like dry shampoo powder thing.
That is one of their hero products, and it's so amazing.
Yeah,
So
I always come back to it.
I know, me too. I've got multiple.
I try new ones and then I come back.
It's so good. And it doesn't leave the white cast, and it just like, yeah, it's incredible. So I was always I was sort of fangirled. And when they came to Oil and Water, they came with a brief to essentially revitalize the positioning a bit, but mostly sort of the expression of the brand visually as well as verbally. And that's so my jam. I mean, it's like they had such a strong brand platform already. They knew who they were. But, again, 10 or so years in to the clean beauty space, when everything was a lot of those initial claims and points of differentiation were really table stakes by that point. It was no longer enough to just say, we're clean and we use clean ingredients and we source ethically. Like, all of that's just like not a differentiator. So I think they were wise to say, what can we lean into that's really ownable and brandable that nobody else is really doing in the space? So that was our brief. And they did work with another agency who I love to do most of the visual identity work and the packaging work, the brand identity, et cetera. We played a really important role in the art direction for the website. But the big work that we did for them was that we went back to some of the core tenets of the brand, Yana's story, the foundation of the brand, some of the more symbolic aspects of the brand. And really, we basically sort of rewrote and reimagined, I wouldn't say reimagined, we revitalized the brand DNA. And so for me, brand DNA is the archetype, the personality, the voice and the tone, the language and the lexicon. And then we rewrote the brand story, the founder story, and ultimately we wrote all the copy for the website and we designed the website. And so what we're seeing now that we weren't necessarily seeing and hearing as boldly as before, what is the really leaning into like the whimsical and the kind of the quirky and the wild aspects. Like, if you go to the website, there's so much content now about like beauty in the wild and being wild at heart. And that's really like Yana's essence, but it's also the essence of this core consumer. They're not like, this isn't like a high, like style, finished kind of coiffed look. This isn't salon ready hair. This isn't like, oh my gosh, free. This is the girl that's like, it's like this. It's like my hair.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like mine too.
yeah,
It's like, yeah,
we
choppy and like what like little
like
stuff.
we just are like a little bit windswept, and we've been outside a lot, and we've got some sun on our skin, and we were probably on a boat this weekend. And that's the lifestyle of Captain Blankenship. And we really wanted to capture that language. So I think that rebrand, I think, was a real success and a real example of revitalizing and staying totally true to the essence. We didn't touch the essence of that brand. We just sort of polished it up and made it shiny and brought it forward more. And again, we worked in partnership with another design studio who did an amazing job on the packaging, and they really doubled down on like the aluminum, their B Corp. So they're like walking the talk in every way. We did also do some deeper storytelling around their ingredient sourcing, and that's on their website. We kind of developed this interactive map to really show like where things are sourced from, which I think is still something customers want to know, and they care, like, because quality of ingredients matters. So how do we talk about that in a fresh way that doesn't feel like table stakes and like everybody's saying it? Yeah. So I think that was a really fun one. And I do think we saw a lift from that. I mean, they're now in Erewhon. I think they've expanded distribution. I think they've been up for some awards. So it was, I hope Yana would say it was a revitalization effort that was really worth it.
I love that. And I think I know the answer, but is there in that whole rebranding or revitalization process, and this doesn't just have to speak to Captain Blankenship, but could speak to some of the other brands that you've worked with. Is there one thing that you've seen really impact conversions? So like, is it like having a tagline that really stands out, or having like above the fold, or, the About Us story? Like, I know you can't point to just one thing because it really is comprehensive, but if you're forced to, would you say there's one sort of thing that does have maybe quite a bit of an impact on the conversion?
If we're looking just at the sort of online, the D2C experience or the digital experience or the owned website, I think that the best practices that I kind of always say, like, you have to do this is, I know a lot of people like to use that hero space to promote a promotion or a giveaway or a product or a new hero launch, and that's totally fine. But even right below that, like the static kind of bar where you're being able to really message your point of differentiation. And usually that's born. So if I'm writing copy and we go from brand DNA and brand story and all the sort of core messaging to, hey, can you write website copy for me, which happens a lot, I'm looking to kind of transform the positioning statement that is really an internal statement, right? It's not really customer facing in its initial, like, original intention. Kind of looking at the brand vision and mission and promise and taking the essence of those statements, which are all very connected and unified, and crafting one incredibly compelling, scroll-stopping statement that speaks to who are you for and how are you doing what you're doing better than anybody else. It's not enough to say, I wouldn't use a campaign headline there. That's just speaking to, like, you're trying to sell a product. And it's not enough to kind of say that you're clean or that you're a clean beauty brand, or it really has to be like, what are you doing better and different than anybody else in the industry? And if you can't say that, if you don't know what that is, stop the presses, go back to brand strategy and do the work, because it's too crowded to not have that clarity. So, and I think that belongs static, evergreen, somewhere above the fold on your homepage. And I don't think that it's less important than whatever product you might be promoting in that season or that month. So that's my opinion about best practices but I would say the broader answer to that for me is, and I'm thinking about my go-to-market framework, which we talked about, the 6 C's. The things that really work are making sure that as you're executing your channel strategy, your content strategy, that every single touch point is not only connected to something that's culturally relevant. And I don't mean like a trend or like a moment or political or anything like that. I just mean that you as a brand have your finger on the pulse of culture right now and how we're feeling and thinking and talking and that your brand is always sort of embedded into the cultural narrative and the cultural moment. And there are brands that do this really well. There are brands that this is not even on their radar, and they're basically just putting out the same sort of one branded message all the time. I think this is where the art of marketing comes in, is that you can stay 100% true to your brand, to your essence, and still see where your brand fits into the cultural narrative. And that might mean pulling in brand collaborators or working with influencers or looking at really trending content types across social platforms and embedding your brand into these best practices. This is the stuff that changes month by month, quarter by quarter. But what doesn't change is the overarching message of your brand and the essence of your brand and this sort of drum beat that you're always beating what you're trying to say. But the content types are going to change, right? The influencers you work with are going to change. You're going to test different formats. You're going to test different platforms. This is the stuff that moves the needle in the end. And I'm not talking about like one viral moment, because I don't focus on that. I focus on cumulative resonance. But I think that cumulative resonance happens when you are really creatively going, here's my message, here's my brand platform. How can I implement it and embed it in what's happening today, right now, across social platforms and in culture with my core audience? So I know that's not like one simple answer, but I do think it is the answer to turning on a switch for brand relevance.
Yes, I love this conversation because that's what kind of stood out to me the most actually during our go-to-market masterclass was that cultural relevance piece, because it made me think of PR campaign or PR pitch that I did for the brand Mahalo, which you probably are familiar with.
Oh, I know very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was during COVID, and I remember we had our PR calendar all laid out for like 6 months. We knew what the pitches were going to be, depending on the season, depending on what was happening in the world or what holidays were coming up, right? And then COVID hit. And we had to kind of scrap all of that and be like, and get creative and become of the moment, right? And so for those of you who may not be familiar with Mahalo is all about like Hawaii, like all the ingredients are unique to Hawaii. There, many, if not most of them, of the ingredients are grown in Hawaii and pulled and processed under like moon cycles, and it's all about this sort of like whimsical travel adventure like vibe that's like taking you somewhere beyond where you are right now, right? And I remember thinking to myself, well, I was going to use a different word. I was like, well, shoot, what do we do now? And then I was like, it's all about escape and escapism, right? And the brand is so like, it takes you somewhere else into this magical world of Hawaii. And if we can't travel to Hawaii, well, the closest thing would be to use Mahalo's products, right?
Yeah, bring Hawaii to your bathroom because
Correct.
You can't go anywhere. Yeah.
Correct. That pitch landed so well. And it was so timely. It was like literally that week. I was like, I might get either canceled for pitching this way, right? Because it's like you're leveraging, not in like a bad way, but it's like you're speaking to the moment. You're speaking to what's happening right now, but you're also pitching something at the same time. So there's some sensitivity that has to happen there as well. But no, it actually ended up landing really well and got picked up by a number of different publications, like Elle, Forbes, like a number of different publications picked it up pretty quickly. And so my point in sharing that story is like, to your point, like taking what already is, like whatever that brand essence or brand personality is or identity is, and then applying it to the moment. So you're not changing your brand identity is what you're saying. You're not changing the personality or the essence. You're just applying it to what's already happening and being included in the moment.
And I would say, I mean, you're being opportunistic in the very best way. And I feel like every entrepreneur, every brand founder should be able to have that lens of being opportunistic with their brand. Where can I authentically engage my brand in this moment? And to your point, like I have had a number of conversations in the last few months around, okay, the world feels like it's on fire. It feels a little bit ick to be pitching beauty when we've got major polarizing conversations happening in culture. I personally don't believe that a brand needs to interject themselves into every political conversation. But what I do think, and this is just my own personal approach to life in general, is how can you make lemonade? And where are there opportunities for brands to look at even really tense, polarizing moments and conversations and find ways to insert themselves into a conversation, maybe reframe it in a way that feels like it's not a political statement. It's actually a statement of like, well, here's how we can make lemonade right now, y'all. And when the brand can do that successfully in a really authentic way, it brings levity to an otherwise really tense situation. I have an example I'll share with you. I feel you're like that thing where like, I could get canceled for saying this, or it could totally land. And so my situation just like that is around tariffs. We're in such a tense time, and brand founders that are already in the market are feeling this way, way more than most of my clients who are pre-market brands. But we're definitely strategizing, and we're definitely sort of trying to diversify our options, and we're all thinking about it. But one thing that came up for me, and I was like, I would love to see a brand tackle this head on. We hear so much from brands, and I'm thinking of a few that come to mind around less but better and minimalism, and really slowing down the trend cycle and slowing down the production cycle, and really focusing on just having your essentials. I mean, there's a lot of brands out there that kind of have this message, right? Because we're also very aware of hyperconsumption. We're very aware of how hyperconsumption leads to waste, and no matter how sustainable your packaging is, like if you're launching a new product every quarter and you're pushing consumption, it can feel like kind of like a hypocritical thing, right? And I know brands that struggle with this. So my kind of like harebrained, possibly totally cancel worthy conversation that I have with myself is, could we take this tariff conversation as a brand and say, look, this is an unfortunate reality that might be forcing all of us, consumers, companies, to be more thoughtful about what we consume, to really only consume what we really need, our essentials. And yeah, you know what? I'm going to pay a little bit more for them because I know that they're quality. I know that I need them. I know that I can't live without them. They're my must-haves. If a brand can position their hero SKUs as must-haves that, like, no matter the tariff situation, their customers are going to buy more, pay a little bit more for them, and they're going to buy just the essentials. They might scrap some of the other things, but they're going to keep those. Like, I actually see it as an opportunity to lean into the less but better narrative. Is it touchy? Absolutely. But is this an opportunity to actually like strike a chord with customers who are feeling the pinch right now, and to say, this is where, if you have to choose one thing out of everything that we offer, this is the one thing that you really can't live without. And we're going to double down on this one hero product for the next 6 months. And we're going to say, this has to be it because it's your essential, it's your go-to. So I don't know. These are just like, I think we can turn touchy, cultural, polarizing conversations into opportunities that land on the consumer's heart. And we let them know that we see them. And we're not going to just pop a tariff tax on every purchase. We're going to actually have a conversation about, okay, what do you need? Let's work together because we want to give you exactly what you need, nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, so many thoughts are coming up. So I've been taking notes on this. So one thing that came to mind is it almost not, emphasizes the importance of positioning even more, because if consumers are being a little bit more selective in the products that they're willing to use and also try brand new, right? If they're being more choosy, more selective, then even more of a reason for the positioning to have to be that much stronger, right? And because it really has to speak to them for them to want to try it.
Especially if it's a brand new product. So I think if you are an emerging brand coming out in this era, and look, I mean, if you're coming out in the next like 6 weeks, right? Because in 5 months from now, we could be feeling very differently about the economy. But if you are just launching, it matters so much how you're positioned, how you're offering value. And I don't mean just price value. I mean, what are the softer, like, what's the value that you're bringing to people's lives, right? Because some people will pay a little bit more if the product is bringing other value add to their life through other ways, right? And I think beauty is a value. So I think like beautiful packaging and a beautiful cut experience and a sensorial experience. Like, yeah, if I'm gonna like go through a sort of a clearing out and a cleaning out and really focusing on what I want and need in my life right now, and I'm not going to spend extraneously and superfluously, then I'm gonna do my fewer better, right? Like I'm gonna have the things that are just so sensorial and so luxurious and so beautiful, and I'm just gonna cut out some other stuff. So like, where is the real value that you're adding compared to your competition? Right? Understanding how you can say, look, this is why you need to buy me over them. This is how you're going to grab mind share from that consumer away from your competition and towards your brand. It's never mattered more because people are kind of holding their wallets a little closer right now. We keep hearing the recession word kind of circulating. People are a little bit more cautious. So I would say, yes, for emerging brands, it's really critical to have that clear positioning. And then for existing brands, let's say your existing brand strategy has been like very commercial, very like fast beauty, very like you're putting out a product every quarter. This is a time to come back to that positioning and go, what do you really stand for? And what does separate your products from the others? And maybe focus on these hero SKUs that always perform for you and that are universal products in a woman or someone's arsenal, whether it's skincare or beauty, that you can create a whole campaign around. Like, look, this is the one thing you can't do without. And I mean, I could create a campaign around why you can't do without cleanser just as easily as I could why you can't do without blush. It doesn't matter what it is, but it is about sort of focusing, understanding the emotional reality that customers are feeling right now. Like, ugh, I don't really want to spend extra money. And saying, we hear you, we get it. And here's the one thing, if you're going to buy from our brand and if you're looking for a blush or a cleanser, here's the one thing you need and here's why you need it from us.
I like that a lot. And you mentioned like the fast beauty too, and it made me think of one brand that I've worked with, like a makeup brand that was doing drops like every month, actually, not just every quarter, every month. It was like a lot of collabs with like some of the biggest makeup artists and influencers out there. And it makes me think like strategy wise, maybe even going to some of like, rather than doing collabs every month, it's just being really strategic of doing collabs every quarter or going back to those hero product collabs that really rocked it.
Or like an archival situation, which is everybody loves a good archival collab or a campaign that feels nostalgic, that sort of reminds us of maybe an easier time. I mean, this is the season. This is something that I've talked a lot about in my Substack and just other venues is it's not the micro trend. It's not even the political moment exactly. It's the energy that is driving it. So we could argue that right now in our country, particularly, the energy that's driving a lot of conversations, a lot of decisions is sort of one of uncertainty, anxiety, and sort of an unknown future. And
Again, will I add again?
yeah, again, right? It's like, hello, welcome back. We should be pros at this by now, but it always feels sort of fresh, a fresh terror. and I, and a certainty. And I think if we can tap into that emotional territory through campaigns, through daily, weekly social content. And I'm not saying to stoke fear. What I'm saying is like, really like an emotional awareness of where your customer is, finding in your own brand voice, in your own way, a way to acknowledge the reality.
I was just going to say acknowledge is the word that I'm hearing and I'm thinking is like just acknowledging that something's happening, not like same old, but also not, like you said, like fear mongering, but just being like, we're in this too. We're feeling this too, just along with you, and just acknowledging like that something's happening. I think that alone
matters so much. And then I would say for a brand not to feel tempted to just put everything on flash sale and say, because we know that everybody's freaking out, here's a 25% off sale. I think that feels desperate. And then that actually makes the brand feel anxious. You have to meet the customer with an acknowledgement and awareness, we understand, but also as a solution to that anxiety, not meeting them with that anxiety. And so this is where it's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's think as a brand. We need to be the calm in the middle of the storm. We need to be a place that people come and they feel safe, they feel seen, they feel heard. And I know I'm talking broad strokes here, but I think every brand founder can find ways to make this true for them in a really authentic way. And maybe they want to feel some joy in a time where everybody's freaking out. So what's joyful? Well, maybe joy is going back to a time that felt a little bit less crazy. So to this earlier point, like an archival campaign, pulling back like the best sellers, like the best of the last 10 years, like what were your fan favorites? Like I could come up with so many campaign ideas that just bring joy and that take us back to a time where life felt a little bit more stable and a little bit more certain, even if it's subconscious. Instead of pushing newness or pushing, you need this, or pushing, I'm going to put everything on sale because everybody's poor right now. That's meeting anxiety with anxiety. So how can we meet like consumer uncertainty with like, guys, like levity, like we're going to make it through this together. Here, let me give you something fun. Let me give you something to think about, like take your mind off of this. So I just think there's a million ideas, but at the core, it is understanding the emotional territory that's driving the cultural moment.
so good. So good. I love this idea of let's maybe be the leader is what I'm hearing. Just want to mirror back to you, like be the leader and help elevate people out of that anxiety, even if it's in the smallest way, right? We can't maybe make it go away, but we can rise above it instead of like leaning into it in the same energy, right? Love that.
And I think this takes it takes a lot of self-awareness for the founder, because if anybody's feeling scared, it's a founder of an indie brand. So it is a level of like, okay, founders, you have an opportunity here. Let's flip the script. Let's reframe. You have a platform. You have customers who love you. You have a product that they love. How can we use this crazy time that we're in to bring some joy and bring some levity? And beauty is fun. So we're not trying to like, we don't have to get into the political conversation to use the energy of it to help people.
So good. Okay. So Rachel, a couple more questions for you. What is like a brand or a couple brands that you feel are really killing it right now, and why? And maybe it is because they are they are culturally relevant. Maybe they're bringing that levity, or maybe they're just killing it because they are.
Yeah. So two brands come to mind who I just like everything they do. I'm like, you do it right. So the first one is Merit. Merit is a really interesting one that I've been watching for a really long time. And I could do a whole I don't know, case study on Merit. That's not a brand that I've ever touched, so I have no ownership over this at all. I'm just fangirling over the leadership team. So their CEO is just a boss. Their CMO is brilliant. And so right away, you've just got a really knowledgeable leadership team who knows the space. What's interesting about Merit to me is that they didn't claim white space. They're not even really a terribly innovative brand. They're not doing anything that's totally new. I mean, they're sort of the evolution in my mind of the sort of the clean girl aesthetic grown up, right? It's what Bobbi Brown was 20 years ago. It's maybe a little bit what Glossier was 10 years ago, but now it's the Glossier girl grown up, right? It's speaking to a little bit of a more sophisticated woman. It's still, the color palettes are not shocking. It's still very much that sort of no makeup vibe. But what they do so perfectly, actually, is they have a very clear, unapologetic POV. They just have a very clear brand POV that is experienced through their packaging, their branding, their formulas, their color palettes, their art direction, their social presence, their voice on social, their campaign creation. You cannot poke holes through their brand platform at any touch point of the consumer journey and say, that's a miss. Even their latest launch, which just launched last week, this whole concept of the uniform, which is actually going back to being really aware of the cultural moment. We don't want to overthink anything. We are so stressed out about everything else in the world. The last thing we want to think about is what are we wearing today, right? So they're tapping into this, let's reduce stress. Let's be really minimalist and chic with our approach. And then in one of their social campaign pieces, they showed Steve Jobs through the years. And he's literally wearing the exact same outfit over 2 decades. And then they did a couple similar like that. And they're don't overthink it. I was this is so brilliant and then they're launching
But
a
I love that it's not
universal
saying so blatantly saying reduce stress. It's not saying it so blatantly and directly. It's
they're
this
tapping
undertone.
in to the emotional territory of the cultural moment. We all are freaking stressed out. And this campaign invites us to just be okay, you know what? I'm not going to fucking stress. Excuse me. I'm not going to stress about this. I'm not going to stress about it. And I'm going to buy this because it's going to do everything I need it to do. Of course, the functional benefits are there. Of course, the branding is on point. Of course, the formula works, right? They're not trying to win on functional benefits because you really can't in beauty and skincare, not really, unless you're doing something wildly different. They're not really trying to win on saying, oh, we're innovating a new category or we're innovating a new formula texture. None of that. They're this is just what you need. And don't overthink it. And it's going to be perfect. And it's your everyday go-to. And that's exactly the mindset of consumers today. So I feel like they nail it always. And their art direction just creates a world that I want to inhabit. Similarly, I would say it's not a beauty brand per se, but it's a sort of a home lifestyle brand is Flamingo Estate. And if anybody knows me, you're probably so tired of me talking about Flamingo Estate because I am I'm such a fangirl. So Flamingo Estate, I won't give you the full case study on them, but founded by a creative director, agency owner turned brand owner. So he loves brand. He's an incredible brand steward. But they really came out of COVID and they really did sort of define or redefine the farm to table, farm to bottle concept that I would argue 10 years or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Laurel was really the pioneer of this slow beauty movement and really looking at the land and taking whole plant ingredients and putting them in bottles and skincare. So Flamingo Estate is sort of Laurel meets Martha Stewart. It's from the land, slow beauty, slow living, really making a case for like, yeah, you're going to pay more because it's the real deal. And we're not cutting corners. And everybody's like, here, take my money, because they are so unapologetic about it. I mean, they have honey that's like over $100 because of where it's sourced from. Like, it's not for everyone. But I will say that, again, similar to Merit, the way that you see just such an incredibly tightly integrated brand across every consumer touch point, and you feel it. You feel their authenticity. You feel their story come through. They just don't miss a beat. And I definitely attribute that to Richard, the founder, being a brand guy. But I don't think it's just that. I think that it is someone, a team, and a vision for doing beauty and pantry food staples and wellness and home with soul. And if I could name like one brand with soul, because that's my jam, Flamingo Estate is like in my top 3 right now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to do a deep dive after this call.
Yes. Candle. You cannot go wrong with their candles. So if you buy one like product to like test out Flamingo Estate, their candles are epic.
Okay. I'm going to be checking this out right after. It's funny that you mentioned Merit, because I have to give it another try. Like, I have to come back, and probably because I haven't experienced the brand in its fullest. The way that you're explaining it, I'm like, oh my God, like this is so in line with something that I would like. I did try, like, the colors don't speak to me the way, like, product wise, the colors aren't speaking to me. And I tried, like, my first like experience with a brand, like a makeup brand, typically will be a lip color, right? And I'm all about like bright. Like, this isn't even bright enough for me right now. Like, I do like Barbie pink. Like, it just works well with my complexion for whatever reason. Like, even my nail, like it's like hot, like bright, like magenta. That's what, I don't know, whatever reason, that's what works for me. And I couldn't find a one bright color in their collection, which is probably intentional, I'm sure.
So and this is where it's just like, they know their consumer, and who knows, maybe they'll come out with a Barbie pink lip, but you're right. They are very neutral. And my whole vibe is like very earthy and neutral. And I don't like feeling like I'll do like a red lip on special occasions, to my husband's chagrin. He's like, take that off. But sometimes he does whatever. He just likes the natural, and I like the natural. And that's sort of my vibe. So Merit's a really good brand for me because that's who they are. And so I think what I love about what you just shared is that they're a brand that knows, they know who they're for, and sort of what sort of the aesthetic is that they're trying to put out in the world, and what aesthetic the Merit girlies are into. And because they're so clear on who they are, you're so clear on that it's not for you. And I think that's amazing, because if you were like, I don't really have an opinion about Merit, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. I think great brands, there's strong opinion about them one way or another.
100%. It's kind of the point that we're making today. It's like exactly this. Like, I love this brand. I don't know if I love this brand, but let me give it another shot. So, okay, final question for you, Rachel. Fun and dirty question. What's your favorite beauty product and why?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I just said, I play it pretty minimalist, but there are a few things that are like my staples every single day. Like, if I didn't have them with me, I'd feel naked. From a skincare perspective, I use a dual kind of like daily thing. It's Ayuna, the brand Ayuna, Ayuna. They're indie, they're luxury, they're beautiful. And they have a product called the Facial, which is essentially like a toner exfoliator kind of liquid. And it's very original and sort of innovative. And it definitely like smooths my skin surface and really helps with hyperpigmentation. I'm a Florida girl, so I've got it. And then I follow that with another Ayuna product called Needle, Need, and then / like LE. This has like micro spinacles in it that create, like, kind of open up pathways so product is able to penetrate more deeply. And then I follow that with either a vitamin C or a retinol product, and then my moisturizer. So that no matter what, because I'm always testing treatments and moisturizers, but those two are foundational. And then from a makeup perspective, I have to do my brows every day. So I actually have it right here on my desk. I use Komoko. It's another really it's a little indie brand. Beauty Heroes carries it. And this is the jam. I do it every morning. And then I follow it up with like a clear gel. I don't know if you can kind of tell. They're pretty light today, but sometimes I darken them. Anyway, brows is the thing. And then if I have any energy left, I'll do mascara, but I keep it pretty simple.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So many great beauty tips too. I'm going to have to check out that brand, Aina. Okay. Amazing, Rachel. So, tell us, where can people find you? How can people find you? Like, give us the details.
Amazing. So my website is rachelrobertsmattox.com. I'm actually going through a rebrand. So tune in now and then tune back again in like July and you're going to see a refresh.
Well, this might go live in July, so that'll be perfect.
Okay, great. Well, maybe you'll see the new and improved. I also have a Substack called The Soul of Brand, and you can find me there and follow along. I do a lot of writing around all of these topics and all this content. And my services, brand strategy, brand DNA, go-to-market strategy for pre-market brands. It's all kind of outlined there on my website. So those are the two best places. I'm on Instagram as well. I'm on LinkedIn. So just find me. I'm really easy to find and would love to meet anyone who is inspired by this conversation and looking for support in launching your brand.
Amazing. Thank you, Rachel. As always, I love our conversations. I feel like they can go on for way longer. And I think we'll probably need to do like a follow-up to this session. But thank you for joining me here today. And for all of you who are listening, if you love this episode, please leave us a review. Every review matters. And we read each and every one of them. So we appreciate all of you. And until next time on the Beauty and the Brand podcast. Bye, everyone.